Welcome to a very special impromptu edition of Pensare Basketball. Something happened this morning. I had an idea and I wanted to expand on an idea that I had, which is I think the Toronto Raptors might want to call the Indiana Pacers and inquire about a former two-time All NBA player who may be a little bit familiar to some Raptor fans. His name is Pascal Siakam. Now, look, I understand that it can be extremely unhealthy psychologically to get stuck up on the past. And people who follow this channel know that I actually am not a super Pascal Siakam fan. I am a person who has a respect for Pascal Siakam, but I am not one of those irrational people that was crying into a pillow when Pascal Siakam inevitably got traded. More so at the moment when the trade happened, I was more like, about time. I had actually been calling for Pascal to be traded for almost 2 years prior to when he was actually traded because I saw the inevitable fit, timeline, construction issues with building around Pascal and Scotty at the same time. And of course, at the time, the roster construction was very different. The Raptors did not have depth. The Siakam trade allowed them to get a lot of depth. It allowed them to get 3 first round picks. How they've used those first round picks? Well, they managed to use one of them on Jacoby Walter, one of them on Ochai Agbaji, and inevitably one of them was used to parse away the contract of Kelly Olynyk and also Bruce Brown, the last vestiges or last bits of that trade for Pascal Siakam for the now very well established and very popular Brandon Ingram. So right now, the Toronto Raptors and Indiana Pacers are in a completely different place. And the reason that Pascal Siakam went to Indiana was to play with Miles Turner, was to win and to compete for championships. Siakam is a competitive dude, and I want to temper what I'm saying, or at least caution what I'm saying, by saying that I am delirious right now. I haven't slept for 18 hours, 19 hours at this point. I am editing, and I had a series of thoughts, and I wanted to put them down. And I'm actually curious how this is going to turn out. This is going to be a very random live, and I hope you'll bear with me as I work through my mental diarrhea and come to you with a reason for why I believe this. First of all, assets fluctuate in value, right? They do. Sometimes you buy a home for 2 million, property tanks, goes down to 1 million. You're holding the bag on a mortgage that exceeds the value of your property. So you do what a smart person does, which is you decide between your credit and common sense. So you either board up the house and let the bank eat it, or you ruin your credit for the rest of your life. It's weird how this happens. A year ago, it was unfathomable given where the Indiana Pacers were, what they were competing for. Even 6 months ago, it was unfathomable. But things happened. Things happened. Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles. He may never be the same again. We don't know. And the Indiana Pacers certainly don't know. Obviously, there's a chance he will come back next year, at which point Pascal Siakam will be a year older and the timeline to compete will be drastically reduced. This is a decision that Kevin Pritchard and the Indiana Pacers and Rick Carlisle made when they allowed Miles Turner to effectively walk. Now, they didn't want him to walk, they were lowballing him, but ultimately they saw the writing on the wall. They allowed the stretch big that allowed Siakam to be so successful to walk. And now Pascal Siakam is left carrying a team that is, I believe, after tonight, 1-11. They are the worst team in the Eastern Conference. They are right down there with the Washington Wizards. And right now, the value of Siakam is plummeting fast. He is a player who is over 30. He is a player that is very, very well paid at $45 million a year. And that deal just 6 months ago felt like a bargain. He was playing amazing. And I have changed my mind about Pascal Siakam on Toronto. And I'll tell you why. Let me guide you through this. And this trade is not just a Pascal Siakam trade, it involves a lot more. And it's a chance for Toronto to undo two of their biggest mistakes in one trade. It's going to take a lot. It's going to be a pretty fair trade, but I want to take you through the reasoning for why I would do this. Number one, the Raptors made a very fatal mistake trading Siakam and also trading OG Anunoby when they were up against the wall. They had no options. Everybody knew what they had to do. and they didn't have the leverage at that moment to command the price that they felt that these players were fairly worth. Now, since the moment that they've traded OG and Pascal, it's not lost on me that everyone in the world has realized how good OG and Pascal really are. OG is considered an absolutely untradeable core piece in New York, blossoming under the new coaching staff, and Pascal Siakam just won Eastern Conference Finals MVP and really relaunched himself into the upper echelon of NBA stars, widely considered a top 30 player in the league. The Toronto Raptors, at that moment when they traded Pascal, were desperate. They did not want to pay him, but he wanted to stay. I'm reminded that he wanted to stay, that he was heartbroken that he left. And there's no love lost here between himself and this fan base. There are still many fans in Toronto that were rooting Indiana on precisely because they wanted to see their former NBA champion Pascal Siakam succeed. And as one of those big Pascal Siakam critics, I realized that I'm probably the last person in the world that you would expect to say, go trade for Pascal Siakam. But I want to clarify why I believe this. Number one, the situation for both teams has changed completely. Whereas Toronto, when they traded Pascal Siakam, had no depth, Toronto now has an abundance of depth. They had no real young pieces apart from Scotty Barnes, and they needed to replenish the coffers. Now they have Jamal Shed, they have Jacoby Walter, they have CMB, they have Mobo, they have young players that I actually believe in. Toronto did not have a third player to put next to them that was offensively coherent with them. They now have Brandon Ingram. So the context has changed. Indiana at that point was looking for a star to pair with Tyrese Halliburton to compete for championships because Halliburton, fresh off of, a deep run in the NBA Cup, had put it out there that he wanted some immediate help. And the Indiana Pacers obliged by getting him the best star that was available for what they had to offer, which was Bruce Brown and three very, very invaluable, but soon to be one very valuable first round pick. And ultimately, the two teams made the deal. The context for both teams has completely changed. It is now the Toronto Raptors that are suddenly eyeing a wide open East. It is now the Indiana Pacers that are possibly on the precipice of a full scale rebuild. Pascal Siakam makes even less sense for the Indiana Pacers today than he did for the Toronto Raptors 2 years ago. So the question then becomes, why do you make this deal? Why do you make this deal? Well, I've been thinking a lot about a few things. And again, I would like to guide you through my thought process this morning. My first thought was, why do I want to trade for Lauri Markkanen so badly? Well, I want to trade for Lauri Markkanen because he stretches the floor, because he's a good post player, because he's a reasonable playmaker and ball handler at that size. Why do I not want to trade for Lauri Markkanen? He's not a very good defender. He's not a very good rebounder. And it was reminded watching Pascal Siakam play for the Indiana Pacers during the finals and the Eastern Conference Finals and the run up to that, that Pascal Siakam has become a very good shooter for the Indiana Pacers. A skill development curve that started in Toronto but ultimately blossomed in Indiana. He's also become a pretty good defender again, which was pretty interesting to watch. So Siakam is not a perfect player by any means. He is very overpaid at 45 million for his age, and I don't think the Indiana Pacers will have a ton of suitors if they open up to trading for him. But one team that really does make sense for Siakam, ironically, is the Toronto Raptors, his former team. He stretches the floor for Scotty and BI in a way that, frankly, very few bigs on this team really can. He does synergize extremely well with Sandro Mamukelashvili. He is a better rim protector than RJ Barrett, who is inevitably and obviously the player going out in this deal, at least on one side of it. And more importantly than anything, he gives the Toronto Raptors a very, very great floor raising second unit guy, not to mention an extremely versatile complementary piece, not to mention a major upgrade to their defensive focus. So that's the first thing I was thinking about is we've changed, Siakam has changed, the situation has changed, the price has changed, the rosters have changed. The second thing I was thinking about was the OKC Thunder. Now, of course, I am trying my very, very best to do my editing assignment because I do have to pay off my mortgage and this is a job and it pays and I have a deadline tomorrow morning and I'm going to make that deadline. But I'm a basketball junkie. And so about an hour and a half ago, I started to just watch OKC. I wanted to watch their defense. And you know what I realized watching OKC? They don't have any holes defensively that you can pick on. You can't pick on Alex Caruso. You can't pick on Cason Wallace. You can rarely ever pick on Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, although Shea would probably be the second best defender in the Toronto Raptors starting lineup, and he's the defender that very often teams actually pick on. It is quite ridiculous the abundance of good defenders the OKC Thunder have. And I'm reminded that in order to be a great team, you can't have multiple leaky spots defensively. The Toronto Raptors have many leaky spots defensively. So how do you shore that up? Well, you trade your weaknesses for strengths. You trade the players who are creating those weaknesses in one lump sum, and you get back a lot of help defensively. What you need to do right now is you need to trust that Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes are so good offensively right now that they can floor lift a little bit slightly less offensively slanted players. And what you need to do is you need to surround them with great defenders. And I think that Siakam and the two players that I'm going to mention in this trade are probably the right way to go. And the four players that we're going out in this trade are probably the wrong way to go if you're looking at the long term future of the Raptors. So I was thinking about the OKC Thunder. I was thinking about the Indiana Pacers. I was thinking about the Toronto Raptors. I was thinking about the ascent of Scotty Barnes. I actually want to share something with you. Okay. I want to share something with you. And this is Sam Mitchell, former Raptors head coach Sam Mitchell. And this is what he had to say about Scotty Barnes today. And this is also a really big part of my thinking, because if Scotty is legitimately this dude, you need to start thinking about him the way the Indiana Pacers were actually thinking about Tyrese Halliburton.
28, 10, 8, 5 blocks. Can we start talking all NBA at some point for this guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All-star, all-NBA. You look at how Scotty plays and how he impacts the game on both ends of the floor. Think about a guy blocked 5 jump shots, and he's blocking Evan Mobley, who's 6'11", blocking his jump shot. Now he can lead the break and throw left-handed no-look passes. He can post up. Leo and I was talking about this. He can guard every position on the floor, not just guard it very well. Leo, I'm starting to think there's not 12 better players in the East or West better than Scotty Barnes.
28.
Is he right? Is he wrong? Does it matter? Also, KP, I want to issue you a very, very sincere apology. I made a very big mistake, my friend, in the last live, in the post game live. And then the mistake was compounded. So I forgot to read your super chat. I screenshotted it so that I can read it on this. But of course, that doesn't work. Hang on one second. I just made my background your super chat. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. I am so funny. Hold on one second. One second, buddy. Okay. Yes. So the point here is I absolutely forgot to read your super chat, and I'm going to read it in this live. I made a note to myself, like, I have to read KP's super chat, but I made this mistake of not showing it on the screen, and then unfortunately we got a copyright thing because of like 6 notes of music in my intro in the last show, so we lost the chat. So here's your super chat from the last one. You said, they got rid of championship players for him. People should have known who this guy is and not hate him for it. That's Scotty Barnes. So that was your comment. That was your super chat. So I really appreciate you sending it. I did not want to make it seem like I didn't appreciate your super chat. I absolutely did. I'm so sleep deprived right now that I could not remember that I didn't read it. So my thoughts on that are, yeah. And you didn't know what you had in Scotty Barnes at 22, 23. You have a much clearer idea of the type of player he's becoming right now. And so I think that it is worth saying that you know, this is the time that maybe you make the same investment in Scotty Barnes that the Indiana Pacers made in Tyrese Halliburton, that the Orlando Magic made in Paolo Banchero, and you're willing to give up a little bit of the future for a little bit of a better chance in the moment. Because again, the East is open. I'm not afraid of the New York Knicks. I am not afraid of the Orlando Magic. You are literally right now, you are the New Jersey Nets in 2002. And you have something close to a Jason Kidd spearheading you. What you need right now is transition finishers. This team, the way it plays right now, super fast, super transition. Do you know which player fits into this style super well? Pascal Siakam. So let me present you with the trade, and I'm going to tell you why I feel this way and why I think this trade is great. And also, like, I just, again, there's so many thoughts, so many freaking crazy thoughts. I want to take you to something a little bit random here. This is the 2024 draft. Okay. Now, again, if you've been watching AJ Mitchell this year, Jesus, he is so good. He should be starting consistently. Like, he is that good. Keyshawn George is a starter in the NBA. Jalen Tyson is the best three-point shooter on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kyle Filipowski is legit. Adem Bona is the type of center you don't have on your team. Quentin Post is the type of 7-footer who can actually space the floor, who's playing high rotation minutes. There are a lot of draft day decisions in 2024 that are going to haunt this team for a very long time. But honestly, you had 5 picks in that draft. And what did you get for it? You got Jacoby Walter, jury is still out. Jamal Shed, very happy. Jonathan Mobo, jury's still out. Ochai Abaji, missed me with that. Ulrich Shamshi, out of the league. You really need to reevaluate what you've done with these draft picks, because I have a feeling the 2024 draft was full of these types of guys that you can actually get. And I really hope that Elijah Martin works out for the Raptors in 2025. I sincerely hope that players picked after Elijah Martin or right around Elijah Martin do not blossom into the type of player that AJ Mitchell is becoming right now. Because again, these are the types of deals and the types of hits that good organizations consistently hit on. The Raptors, I have to say, right now, if Jacoby and Grady don't work out for you and Ochai doesn't work out for you, you have effectively wasted 3 first-round picks. That is a tough place to be when you are trying to stockpile depth. So here's the thing. You don't know if these guys are going to work out. I don't know if they're going to work out. I don't know if Grady's going to become an all-star, but my immediate read is probably not. I do know, however, that Grady is a weak defender, and I do know that that is probably not going to change at any point in the future. So here's the trade that I propose with the Indiana Pacers, and y'all let me know if you think this is feasible. Here's the deal. Indiana trades Pascal Siakam, Andrew Nembhard, and Isaiah Jackson. The Toronto Raptors trade Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Ochai Abaji, Grady Dick, an unprotected 2026 first, and a 2028 top 10 protected first. Let me know afterwards if you're watching this not live, as I'm assuming you're not psychotic and up at 5:30 in the morning like I am, drinking your 4th coffee of the day. You let me know if this is a trade that would appeal to you. Now, let me give you my rationale for it. Number 1, Andrew Nembhard. This is a mistake. Okay. Not having Nembhard on this team in and of itself is a mistake. You missed on him by 1 pick, and that pick, unfortunately, was a pick that you shouldn't have even had. You should have kept your pick, in the Thaddeus Young deal, and probably picked Andrew Nembhard earlier, in the 20s. You had a chance. You had a chance to get Peyton Watson, the type of wing defender you actually desperately need on this team. You had a chance to get Christian Brown. Again, probably would be a starter for you right now. You had a chance to get Walker Kessler, who would have been your starting center. You had a chance to get all those guys. Instead, you wanted Thaddeus Young. When has trading a first-round pick ever worked out well for the Raptors? I really want to know. Like, maybe the last time trading a first-round pick turned out well for the Raptors was we traded a first for Kawhi. That turned out well. You traded a first for Mark. That turned out well because it resulted in a championship. You traded a first for Serge. This team under Masai Ujiri got way too comfortable trading away first-round picks, and I don't like it because first-round picks are good gambles on this type of upside. Andrew Nembhard has blossomed into, in my opinion, one of the best two-way guards in the NBA. And oh, by the way, he's Canadian. So to those of you who will be missing Canadian boy RJ Barrett, you get Canadian boy Andrew Nembhard. Isaiah Jackson is the type of center that this team simply does not have. He provides a lot more size than you currently have and provides a lot of depth. You replace a little bit of your guard depth and you just get a lot bigger with this trade. Nembhard is a lot bigger than Emmanuel Quickley. By the way, with this lineup, you would now start the biggest starting 5 in the Eastern Conference this side of Orlando. Andrew Nembhard is 6'5" and extremely switchable. Scotty Barnes is 6'8", 6'9". Brandon Ingram is 6'9". Siakam is about 6'9", 6'10". Jakob Poeltl is 7 feet. Off the bench, you would have pretty large players overall between Isaiah Jackson, Sandro Mamukelashvili, Jacoby Walter. Jamal Shed would be the only sort of undersized-ish player. Colin Murray-Boyles remains in tow here. So ultimately, Mamu more or less morphs into a 4. Colin Murray-Boyles more or less morphs into a 3, but the 3 works because Isaiah Jackson can stretch the floor a little bit, and so can Mamu. So you have a post hub big coming off the bench. Your second unit really solidifies itself out. This also opens up a pathway to minutes for Chucky Hepburn, possibly minutes for Jonathan Mobo, possibly minutes for Elijah Martin, possibly minutes for your first round pick next year. And for the cap implications, this is relevant. Pascal Siakam has 3 years left on his deal. Emmanuel Quickley has 4 years left on his deal. RJ Barrett has 2 years left on his deal. Split the difference. That's a $30 million player on average between those two players for a $45 million, much better player than both those players on the same number of years, basically. You're also not going to pay Ochai Agbaji from my perspective right now. You're probably not going to pay him. And Grady Dick is also extension eligible next summer. And honestly, do you want to take a risk on Grady Dick right now? Some people are a lot higher. Samson Folk, who covers the Raptors for the Raptors Republic, he's very high on Grady. Me personally, I don't mind cashing out on him right now and letting him have a fresh start next to Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana. I think it would be perfectly fine. Now, why did the Indiana Pacers do this? Well, teams that are looking to lose and bottom out the way Indiana is right now typically want to get younger and want to get smaller. Typically. When the San Antonio Spurs wanted to lose, they traded Jakob Poeltl, largely because bigs help you win in the NBA. By removing Isaiah Jackson, removing Pascal Siakam, you basically make yourself a bottom feeder in the Eastern Conference. By adding Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Ochai Agbaji, and Grady Dick, you add a ton of wing guard depth to play around with. You add players that you can possibly blossom with. Maybe 1 or 2 of these guys work out for you. Maybe Grady Dick becomes something for you. And not to mention, you add the 2 first-round picks. Toronto, in my opinion, with this trade, launches themselves into possibly the best team in the Eastern Conference. Now, of course, it's a hypothesis. You want to believe that you would become the best team in the Eastern Conference, that you could be better than Orlando, that you could be better than a lot of these teams. But I really think that this deal solves most of your problems. It solves, look, the way you want to play fast, right? Pascal Siakam is one of the best transition players in the league, period. You want to play pressure. You want to pressure at the point of attack. Andrew Nembhard is great at that. You want to provide space for Ingram and Siakam and Barnes. Isaiah Jackson can give you that. You want athleticism. Again, Isaiah Jackson can give you that. You want a little bit of size. You want more switchability on the perimeter. Andrew Nembhard fixes that. You want a little bit more rim protection. Pascal Siakam gives you that. Way more. You want rebounding. Siakam and Nembhard are much better rebounders than the players you're giving out for them. So once again, at this point, you're betting on Scotty Barnes legitimately being a top 12, top 15 player. If he is in fact a top 15 player, that puts him in the same echelon of impact as a Tyrese Halliburton. So ask yourself, what is the core that Tyrese Halliburton brought to the Eastern Conference Finals last year? It was him, Siakam, Miles Turner, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, TJ McConnell. That's their upper rotation. You can argue Ben Mathurin, etc. Now ask yourself, is Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Poeltl, Andrew Nembhard, Sandro Mamukelashvili, Colin Murray-Boyles, Isaiah Jackson, Jamal Shed, who is quickly emerging into one of the best pressure backup guards in the league, not too dissimilar from, if I'm being honest, TJ McConnell. What's a better team? I think you can make a very solid case that the Raptors would be a better team. I also want to say that there's three personal things that really matter. Number one is that Toronto already has a really solid relationship with Pascal Siakam. Jakob Poeltl has a great relationship with Siakam. Emmanuel Quickley has already played with Siakam. Scotty Barnes was very, very close to Pascal Siakam. Siakam also has a relationship to Toronto. He has a relationship to the fans. He has a history here. This not only makes sense from a basketball perspective, it actually makes a lot of sense from a business perspective. Pascal Siakam would be a bigger deal in Toronto than he is to any fan base in this league. He won a championship here. He brings that. Number two, allegedly, Bobby Webster did not want to trade Pascal Siakam. This is a rumor. I have no idea how to verify it. I don't know Bobby Webster. But this was the rumor that was floated out that Bobby Webster was never really on board with trading Siakam. So this is a chance to bring him back. Number three, and this is probably most crucial. Situations change everything, right? The same timing is everything in life. I remember my ex-girlfriend when we were 16, when we dated. I can tell you we were probably in the wrong place to have met each other. But having met her later in life, I sometimes wondered if we had met when we were 24, 25, would we have potentially fallen madly in love and gotten married and hopscotched right over all the pitfalls that destroyed our relationship when we were 16 or 17 years old? There's so many things like this where it's just about the right time. The Toronto Raptors are no strangers to bringing people back. Antonio Davis came back. Kyle Lowry has said he will come back. DeMar DeRozan has said he's open to coming back. PJ Tucker came back 2 times. We are not strangers to people coming back. Vince Carter came back, granted, in the form of a retired jersey. Reunions are great, great little show. When Siakam left Toronto, he was a disgruntled franchise player who was being reluctantly built around and slowly pushed out the door. If he comes back to Toronto, he will be seen as the final piece of a puzzle that could potentially compete for a championship this year. Not win a championship, but rather compete for one, as in be one of the last 4 teams standing in the Eastern Conference, as in be a home court advantage team in the Eastern Conference. And in that moment, when you are in the Eastern Conference Finals, Pascal Siakam being your third option or second option is such a freaking luxury. You have no idea until you get there. Siakam being able to anchor an entire second unit and blitzing the shit out of other second units is a luxury very few teams have. If you look at the top teams in the Eastern Conference, it is only the New York Knicks who can even think about telling you, or maybe the Knicks or the Sixers, maybe the Sixers, if they're totally healthy, that can say their third option is better than Brandon Ingram or Scotty Barnes or Pascal Siakam. There are very few teams in the Eastern Conference that have 3 players this good. This is a legitimate big 3. It is a very heavily sized big 3. It is a big 3 that will allow you to actually enact the Vision 6-9 that you so desperately wanted to enact, but with the requisite shooting off the bench that you so desperately need from like the Jameson Battles of the world. Yes, it is worth noting that you are losing one of your two of your best shooters in this deal, and that is going to be not easy to replace. But what you get back defensively is so valuable. Siakam being respected as a scorer is so valuable. Siakam being one of the best post scorers in the league is so valuable. Scotty Barnes leveling up right now as a shooter. Jameson Battle unlocking himself more. And look, you have 3 picks in next year's draft. If it doesn't work out this year, Siakam's not falling off a cliff next year. Maybe he'll fall off the year after that, at which point he'll be an expiring. No big deal. The point here is you will get a young guard who can actually grow with Scotty in this core, with Ingram and Scotty and Andrew Nembhard. That alone is worth the 2 first-round picks. So forget about the 2 first-round picks. Nembhard alone is worth the 2 first-round picks. Swapping Grady, Ochai, RJ, and Emmanuel Quickley for Pascal Siakam and Isaiah Jackson is just a matter of moving some numbers around. A lot of people, despite his recent hot stretch, would probably agree that $32 million is a little bit rich for Emmanuel Quickley. Now, will he perform relatively close to that contract? Sure. Is he 26 years old and a very valuable archetype? Yes. But you're not getting Pascal Siakam and Andrew Nembhard for nothing. You're going to have to give up value. And this is value. Not to mention, you do have Jakob Poeltl, who is also around Pascal's age. So it's not like you're some spring chicken roster. This does make you a little bit older. It does reduce the clutter on your wings. It does kind of pave a path for our beloved Jamison Battle to actually get some minutes. It does create a more defined second unit role for Colin Murray Boyles, where he can have the ball a lot more, and you're not constantly trying to figure out who am I trying to run shit for on the second unit. I think the Toronto Raptors under Masai Ujiri kicked the can down the road way too often. I think they delayed decisions until the last possible moment. And I think what I learned from watching their front office is that not making a decision is a decision. I think this is a bold decision. And if you don't like this decision, I think what I'm trying to say is that the spirit is correct. Maybe the target of Siakam, Nembhard, Isaiah Jackson is not correct. Maybe the correct target is Lauri Markkanen. Maybe the correct target is Anthony Davis. But the spirit of this is simple. You have never been in a better leverage position right now to make a trade. The East is open. Teams have failed. Teams are falling apart. There are so many teams right now that are looking to bottom out. This draft is generational. The more you win, the worse position you are to pivot away from winning. And you don't want to be in a situation where you go so far, you get to the final game of a conference finals, and then you realize, oh, wait, RJ Barrett is unplayable in this series. We keep getting hunted. You don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to be in a situation because in this moment, I will say the spotlight can be a blessing and a curse, right? Brandon Ingram struggled in the playoffs. His value plummeted. You get to the main stage in a wide open East, you better give yourself a puncher's chance. If you believe that Scotty Barnes is close to, or even remotely close to touching his prime right now, you need to start opening that window very quickly. And sure, maybe Siakam won't be here for 3 years. Maybe he'll just be here for 2 years, and then you dangle him as an expiring in a couple of years. But those couple of years, they're valuable. And making deep playoff runs with a local fan favorite, with a really young point guard who is signed up to a very, very good deal, 3 years, $18 million a year for Andrew Nembhard. I think this deal is a home run. You let me know what you think. Sorry to ramble on so much, but let me know. I hope this is one of my succinct lives. I got to get back to editing. Man, yeah, I got to grind, bro. I got to grind. This is about as tired as Cass saying, Rob, I went to bed and wake up for work and you're still live. Sheesh. My friend, this is a completely different live. It started 33 minutes ago and it is about trading for Pascal Siakam and Andrew Nembhard. It is a totally different live. I will, however, tell you that for the last 3 hours, I've been editing and thinking, and this is what I've come to. I've come to a completely delirious. I'm delirious right now. I am so sleepy that my brain has basically flipped it on itself. And I'm just like, you know what? Let's go trade for Pascal Siakam, man. I don't know. I can't get. Let's answer some questions here. D-Roy, how far would you say the Raptors are from contending? They are one more Scotty jump away from contending in the East. How far are they from being on the level of OKC? Honestly, they might be 3 years away from that. But Pascal plus Andrew Nembhard speeds that up by like a year and a half. Like, obviously, Siakam is not ideal. He is older than your timeline. He's a little bit past your timeline, but so is Jakob Poeltl, and you just extended him for 3 years. So is Ingram. Like, you didn't have Ingram when you traded Siakam, right? This was the point that I was making earlier in the live. Scotty Barnes was not already an established all-star and probably heading to what is definitively a second all-star season when you traded Siakam. Siakam hadn't morphed into this 3-and-D type of, off-ball wing adjacent guy that, this transition demon. Like, he was doing a lot of half-court stuff and he was sort of stuck in his ways. I think the year off in Indiana has done him so much good as a basketball player. I think he's developed his game so much. And don't underestimate what a great playmaker he is. Again, I dissected the shit out of Pascal Siakam's game when people were trying to call him a top 10 player. He's not a top 10 player, but what he is better than every single player you're trading for in this trade. And what he also is a proven playoff commodity who proved it on the biggest stages last year that he is made for those moments. And if you can give him the pockets of space that Indiana did last year through the transition play, through the quick decision making and everything the Raptors do, I think he can recreate some of that magic for you too. WYSO, you kept saying Ochai was part of the 24 draft, so I can tell you're tired. No, actually, I am not tired enough to miss that. The Raptors traded the 29th overall pick to the Utah Jazz for Ochai Agbaji because they, at the moment, said they didn't want that many first round picks or they didn't want that many draft picks. So basically, Ochai was traded for the 29th overall pick. Now, what could you have used that 29th overall pick on? Well, you tell me. You could have used it on Jalen Tyson, better than Ochai Agbaji. You could have used it on Kyle Filipowski, better than Ochai Agbaji. You could have used it on AJ Mitchell. If you want to see how much better AJ Mitchell is than Ochai Agbaji, please refer your eyes to this graphic. This must be a nightmare trying to trade for Pascal. Nope, it's not. Anyways, this is Ochai Agbaji versus AJ Mitchell. And oh, by the way, I don't need to tell you, you're paying Ochai Agbaji about 3 times what they're paying AJ Mitchell. See my point though? So, I mean, development, you don't know if AJ Mitchell becomes this for you, but honestly, man, like AJ Mitchell was a really decent player in his final year in college, man. So, nice one saying, I don't know if Pascal, the move, the Raps don't have a Halliburton. Well, I think Scotty is Halliburton adjacent. I think what we saw today, him running the fast break this way, is something that he could do a lot if he didn't have Quickly and RJ Barrett, taking so many possessions. In that sense, I think Siakam, Ingram. I think the only question you need to ask yourself right here is, how do you rank the following starting lineup? Now, I have made a sense all year that the starting lineup does not work. It keeps losing minutes, et cetera, et cetera. I believe the starting lineup did very, very well today against the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I'll remind you, they were down huge in the beginning of the game, and it was the second unit that once again came and dug them out. So the question is, which of these starting lineups do you believe would win a 7-game series? Starting lineup number 1, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Jakob Poeltl. Lineup 2, Andrew Nembhard, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Poeltl. I believe it is so clearly lineup number 2, and I don't think your depth is being hurt that much. If nothing else, I think Isaiah Jackson adds so much to your depth. It gives you the exact type of player you need. If you could do a 3-way and maybe swap Isaiah Jackson for maybe Day'Ron Sharpe and do a 3-way with the Brooklyn Nets, I'd be totally cool with that too. I think the Raptors need to shop right now. I know the natural tendency for a lot of people when things go a little bit well, or you have a little bit of surprising luck with the schedule, or maybe in a few games the Raptors will be 10-5. Congratulations, you are now 10-5. When you are a winning team, your players are viewed differently, your context is viewed differently, and people know, or people at least think in that moment, that you are not desperate to make a trade. The Toronto Raptors have always waited until things fell apart to make trades. My suggestion and my hope is that this time they will not be waiting until the procrastination sets in and they are in the final stages of disaster before they make a trade, but rather be proactive, know what your roster needs, understand that your roster does not work as it's constructed, that you have defensive holes left, right, and center. They're going to get killed in the playoffs. That is feel good a story as 10-5 would be, that it underneath it all is an inherently flawed roster that is bound to fail in the playoffs, and go and trade for some defensive players. Go and trade for Siakam and Nembhard. Like, it makes a lot of sense. WYSO, I just don't like the idea of Siakam hogging the ball in half-court plays, but I do love the spirit of this trade and think Nembhard would be great for us. Like, it doesn't have to be Siakam, obviously. Like, the concept here is, you go and trade for a disgruntled, if not disgruntled, but maybe, and I don't even want to say past his prime, because I think Siakam played some of the best basketball of his life last year. I think what you want to do is you want to take a distressed asset. You want to take your suddenly not so distressed assets and flip it for a severely distressed asset. And I think $45 million of Pascal Siakam is a scary, scary asset to hold if you're the Indiana Pacers, because obviously right now it is in your vested interest that he not play basketball. You are trying to lose as many games as humanly possible to get as high a pick as possible. So Richie Rich saying, with your trade, what is your starting five? Well, quite simply, it is Andrew Nemhart, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Poeltl. So crazy we won tonight and we talking about Pascal trades. Well, see, this is where, there's this old adage in business, they zig, you zag. The common fan, and this is not to be disrespectful to you, and I say this respectfully, the average person thinks that when things are going well, nothing needs to change. The proactive person and the prudent business person actually makes changes when things are going very well. They adjust their investment strategy after the big win, not after the big loss. So I say this as a proactive, or at least I consider myself a very proactive manager when I do things, is whether things are going well or things are not going well, there's always adjustments. There's always things to learn. I think that there are certain things that are going very well for the Toronto Raptors right now, and I think there are certain things that are going very unwell for the Raptors. And I think you'd be very wise, as I've mentioned at least, I think 35 times today, you would be wise to address your problems before everybody in the league knows you have a problem. Anyways, WYSO saying buy low, sell high. Agreed. And the Toronto Raptors, under Masai Ujiri, very often did the exact opposite. They would buy high, shout outs to Thaddeus Young, and then they would sell low, shout outs to dumping Thaddeus Young. They would buy high, shout outs to $18 million for Kem Birch, and then they would sell low. They would buy high on DeMar Carroll, and then they would dump a first round pick to sell him. The Toronto Raptors were like gamblers at a roulette table under Masai Ujiri. Very often, I shout out to Masai Ujiri for doing a lot of good work, but some of his draft moves over the last few years, some of his trades have been really mistimed and really poorly thought out. And I think the Raptors, for once, need to get ahead of it before they get behind it. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a blessed and beautiful day. And please let me know what you think about this trade, or maybe suggest another trade that you think might work. And I'll try to do my best to answer some comments this afternoon when I inevitably wake up from my editing slumber. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.